Welcome to LiveDaf, your online Daf Yomi Shir.
Shalom Aleichem and welcome back to today's Daf Avodah Zarah Samach Ches. We are holding 4 lines off the top of the Amud. Amar Ula. Says Ula, you should know that the machlokes, this dispute that we had yesterday between Rabbi Meir, who says that noisein tam lifgam, which means to say that if there is some forbidden material that lands, it falls into permissible material and mixes with it. But the Isser element imparts a negative flavor. It has a deficient effect. So basically, now it tastes bad because of this mix. These two things clash. For instance, we had an example of vinegar mixing with beans. Beans which are now being cooked in a pot, heated up, and the vinegar falls in there. It just doesn't go. The acid of the vinegar with the heat of it just clashes and has a detrimental effect. It tastes bad. Noisein tam lifgam. So if it's pagan, if the effect is negative, still Rameir says it's Asr, because Isser is Isser. And if there's a tam, there's a flavor, there's a taste coming from that Isser, even though it's a deficient taste, that has deficient effect on the totality of this mix, it's still going to be Asr. He learned it from the psukim that require us to kasher, to cleanse the pots that were used for non-kosher material, to cleanse them from the residue embedded in the walls, despite the fact that they were stale, the taste is stale, it's spoiled. Apparently, even noisein tam lifgam is asr. Whereas Reb Shimon learns from the halacha of the nevela given to the ger, the pasuk says it must be suitable for the ger, apparently only if it's high quality, but if it's pogum, if there's a flavor, taste coming from something which is not going to enhance and improve the mix, that's mutter. Says Ula, you should know this machlokes. This opinion, this position of Reb Meir, that even tam lifgam is asr, that's only sheishbiach lebesoif poigim. Provided that the initial point of when it actually got mixed, the initial effect was a positive effect. It improved on the taste, and then later on somehow it developed into a pgam, into something deficient, because of the Isser ingredient that came along. Aval pogam mikara, but if the initial instant effect was negative, the vinegar just doesn't go with the beans. All would agree, even Rameh would agree, that since it did not contribute positively to the mix, you don't reckon with it. You negate it. The whole point is you're adding some flavor. You're not adding, you're taking away. You're ruining me. So that's Ula's chiddush. If it's pagam bi'ikar, after the negative effect happened right away, there was no point in time when it was okay, when it was a positive contribution. Of course, all agree. Even Rameir would agree that it's okay. You negate it, you nullify it. Esvei Rav Chaga. So Rav Chaga asked the question, Ula, how could you say that? How could you say that if it's pagam bi'ikara, all agree that it's okay? We have a brisa, yayin shenafal teich adashim, wine dropped into beans, into lentils. V'chaimetz shenafal teich grisen, vinegar fell into these split, beans, whatever. It's a bad combination. They don't really go together. Asr, it's still going to be asr, because the wine which is asr and the chaimetz which is asr imparts a flavor. It transfers a taste, despite it being a deficient taste. Rabbi Shimon, okay, he says matir, he allows it because he holds tam lifgam as mutter. And here we have an example of pagam bi'ikara, right? Well, this is a prime example. The pagam bi'ikara, where it has an instant ruining effect, upligi, and there's still a machlokes. Rameir says us. That's a kasha on Ula, who says in this case all agree that it's mutter. Amar Ula responds a little bit sharp. He says chaga. This was Rav Chaga. Chaga, he doesn't even understand what the Rabbanan are saying here. He doesn't fully understand the case that he's quoting. So you have to come moisiv. You can use that as a question on me? Let me explain to you what the Bryce is talking about. It's not speaking as you thought, that it was paga mi'ikara. Hacha b'ma'askin was speaking, k'shenafal tech grisen tzainin. The vinegar fell into grisen, which are tzainin, at room temperature. And at that point, we learned yesterday, at that point, if it's cool, it actually enhances it. That's the way it is. It's only afterwards, when he boiled it up, then it changes the equation of the vinegar with the acidic effect, clashes with the heat, whatever it is. It ends up ruining the flavor. It ends up destroying it. That's a case of hishbiach, and then it got ruined. But since initially it improved it, enhanced it, v'asr. In this case, it's asr. But in my case, paga mi'ikara, all agree it's okay. So that's all the shita. Paga mi'ikara is certainly okay according to all. When it was hishbiach or basayif pagam, that's when we have the machlekes. Rabbi Yechon Amar, he disagrees. Be'pagim mi'ikara machlekes, even when the pagam happened right away, as soon as the vinegar hit the thing, or as soon as the wine, the effect was negative. Still, we have a machlekes. Rameir says it's asr. So although the isra element hasn't really positively contributed to the mix, it's asr. Now comes a question. What did Rabbi Yechanan mean when he said "Bepaygim meikara machlekes"? Machlekes applies when it's paygim meikara. But what about if it's ishbiach and then it became pagam? If initially it improved and then it got ruined. Aval ishbiach b'seif pagam. Does he mean in this case all agree it's not fine? Divya kal asr because initially it improved it. So we disregard the fact that later on it developed into pagam. Since initially, when the mix happened, it enhanced, it improved, it's asr. Or you can say, bein bezu machlekes. The same machlekes applies in this case, applies in that case. Take it, we'll leave it unresolved. Actually, later the Gemara will conclude, based on the brisa, that, yeah, you're right, when it's ishbiach, ulu basayif, pagam, all agree it's asr. But at this point, we're not sure. But in any case, Rabbi Yechan's main crux, main point here is that even if it's paygim mi'ikara, there's a machlekes. Rameir says it's asr. Amar of Amar. How could this be so and not be found in a source? Efshar isa l'had Rabbi Yechan. Could it be that we hold Rabbi Yechan's analysis? V'lo yitani lo b'masnisa, and it's not to be found in a different source, in a Mishnah, in a Brisa. Nafka dok v'ashka. So he went and did his homework, and in fact he discovered a Brisa, actually a Mishnah, which contains this halacha. So again, what are we out to prove? That when Isra falls into Heter and the Pagam happens instantly, Pagam Yikara, you'll still have those two shittas. Reb Shimon says mutter, Ramir says us. It's not. Sa'ar shel chulin, sa'ar is sourdough, like a yeast, which will make the dough rise. It's a piece of sa'ar, piece of yeast, which is chulin, regular food, edible for anybody, right? Shenaval techa isa, drop into the dough. V'yesh b'kadei lachmas. And this amount of sa'ar has the ability to achieve results, to ferment the dough. In fact, it rose, it did its job, done. You don't need any more yeast. And suddenly, another piece of yeast falls in. This time it was problematic material. Made of truma, can only be eaten to a kohen. A sa'ar from product that grew in a vineyard, it's asr b'hano. And this second shipment also has the ability, the power, theoretically the power to bring about fermenting results. It's asr. The dough is asr. Why? Because although the second installment certainly ruined the dough, it over-fermented it, right? It's not even edible anymore. It's too sour. It's too nice and talmud-bavli is asr. That's Rameir's shita. And there's an example of pagam mi'ikara. It had an instant negative effect. As soon as it landed, it ruined it. Reb Shimon matter, because nice and talmud-bavli is mutter. Says the Gemara, okay, end quote. This proves our point. Here you have a classic the paga mi'ikarahu, the negative effect was instantaneous. As soon as it landed, it made it asur. As soon as it landed in the dough, it ruined it. Upligi. Apparently, the machlekes applies even in that case. That's a right to Rabbi Yechna. That when the pagam happened instantly, pagam yikara, it's still asur according to Rabbi Meir. Amar Rab Zera, no, you can't prove anything from there. A dough is very different. Because you see, even if a dough gets over-treated, over-fermented, although you personally can't eat it, but you can still, it has a secondary function to it. It can be used now to leaven other doughs, to be used as sourdough. So since it has that potential use, it's not called ruined. That's Rameir's shita. Reb Shimon holds, listen, it wasn't meant for that, it was meant for personal use and it can't be used, it's pagum, so it's mutter. Reb Meir will hold in this case, even though the ruination happened right away, but it's not really ruined. A dough is different. Although it's over-treated, it's still suitable, but to use it to make other doughs rise. Chameya is like, chametz, right? Kol chamira v'chamiya, right? So chamira is the sourdough, and chamiya is the actual dough that rose. L'chameya, but kamu isas acheres. You can now take from this concentrated, dough, divide it into pieces, and use it to make other doughs rise. Tashma, here comes another attempt at finding a source that tam lefgam, even by pagam mi'ikara, would still be subject to the machlekes. Reb Meir says asur, Reb Shimon says mutter. A similar case of sa'ar, of truma, and chulin fell into, but slightly different configurations than the previous price. Tashma, sa'ar shal truma, so you have a portion of truma sourdough, vishal chulin, a portion of chulin sourdough, and each one on its own could have done the job. Shenaflu techaisa, dropped into a dough. Each one on its own, he could have done the job without his friend. They joined together. Now it's overloaded, too much. And the dough rose, but it overrose, super fermented. It's not even edible anymore. So it happened so quick because it had the double dose. So usually it takes, let's say 2 hours for it to rise. It took an hour, and then it got ruined as well because it was too much in there. The dough is asr because of the isr element that got mixed into the dough, despite the fact that that it's now pagum, right? Reb Shimon Mater, he says you can eat it. Anybody can eat it, even Yisrael, because it's nice and tam lefgam. The isr just ruined it. So that's the first case. Here comes part B of the brisa. So in the previous case, they fell simultaneously. Now they fell separately. Nafal shel truma tchila. First the truma came in, and the dough rose. Divra kol asr. Well, there's no question. In this case, all agree it's asr. Even if it was followed by chulin, too late. Truma already made it rise, improved it, enhanced it, became asr. Naval shel chulin. Suppose the chulin came in first, and the dough rose. V'achakach, and then only later, when it was totally unnecessary, naval shel truma, shel kalei kerem, the forbidden material comes in, asr. It's still asr, even though the second visitor had a very detrimental effect on this dough. And once again, Reb Shimon Matir, because it's nice and tam lefgam. Okay, so we have two parts to the brisa. The first case, they came in together simultaneously. It's a machlekes. In the second case, we have either truma coming in first, all agree it's asr. In the case where the chulin came in first, and then followed by the truma, there's a machlekes. Tanna Kama, who says asr, Reb Shimon, who says it's okay. Reb Shimon Matir, because it's tam lefgam. Now, ve'ahacha. But in this last case, where it was already properly treated by the chulin, and then the truma came to visit, all the truma did was ruin it. As soon as he entered the fray, he just spoiled it. Here's a prime example. The pgam mikara. Mikara, as soon as he landed, as soon as he came to visit, pagam. There was no moment in time that the truma had a positive contribution. Upligi, still it's a machlekes. It's a right to Rabbi Yechanan. Machlekes applies by pagam mikar. V'chitem, perhaps he'll answer, well, it's a dough, and once again, a dough is different because it can still be used for other purposes. Hachanam k'd Rabbi Zarah, perhaps we can apply Rabbi Zarah's answer to this case as well. Supercharged dough can still be used for other purposes. It can be converted into sourdough. Perhaps that's why. There's a reason why it's asur tashma miseifa. Okay. If you don't accept this proof, let's move on to the next part of the brisa, part 3, where it was wine or vinegar mixed into the beans, into the right. Hayayin shenavaltech adashim, the forbidden wine, got mixed into the lentils. V'chemetz shenavaltech grisen, the vinegar, wine vinegar, forbidden vinegar. Shenavaltech grisen got mixed into the split beans. Asur. It's forbidden because the wine and the vinegar were asur, and this is despite it having a negative effect on the recipient material. Rabbi Shimon Matir says it's okay because it's tam of gam. Now here as well, the pagam ikara. The negative effect happened right away. As soon as it got mixed in, there was no moment in time when it was a positive. Upligi, and we have a machlekes. So once again, we prove our point. Machlekes applies even by pagam ikara. V'chitem, perhaps we'll say, here too we can answer, like Ula had responded to Rabbi Chaga earlier, that perhaps it got mixed in while the beans were still at room temperature, in which case it improved and enhanced, and then it got boiled up, and it's shavach or b'seif pagam, in which case it would be asur. Perhaps we'll say Yochanami here too. Kadeshanele Ula Rabbi Chaga will apply the answer that Ula gave to Rabbi Chaga earlier, that it's speaking kishishbiach lo b'seif pagam, that initially it enhanced it because it was at room temperature, where the vinegar improves it, and b'seif pagam, then when it got boiled and heated and cooked up, then it got ruined. Well, says the Gemara, you can't say it's speaking about this type of case, because then all would agree that it's asur. There would be no machlekes in this case, since the initial effect was positive. Since then, since when is there a machlekes in a case where it was mashpiach and then got ruined? All agree it's asur. How do I know? Very simple. Go back to this brisa, to part B of the brisa. V'aktani. What did it say in the brisa earlier? Nafashal truma tchila. So if the truma yeast fell into the dough first, even though it was followed by the chulin, which ruined it, so the ultimate product is now ruined, divrei kol asur. All agree it's asur. Why? Why? It's been ruined. The answer is because the initial effect was positive. So when the initial effect is positive, even though later it got ruined, all agree it's asur. Right? So you can't suggest that the case of the wine with the beans is speaking about a similar type of situation where it was improved and then it got ruined. In that case, all agree it's asur. And here we have a machlekes. So clearly, we have to configure the case of the wine and the beans to be speaking where it was pagam mikara. Because if it was nishbiach and then pagam, it would be asur according to all shittas. The fact is the brisa presents it as a machlekes. The only way we could reconcile that is by configuring it as follows. The wine falls into the beans and ruins it right away. Pagam mikara. It happened while the beans were cooking on the flame. The acid and the heat clash, mismatch, right? Pagam. And we have machlekes. Tanakam says asur, presumably Tanakam is Reb Meir, or according to Reb Meir's shita, and Reb Shimon says mutar, in accordance with his shita. That Noisen Tam of Gam is mutar. And this fully fits with Rabbi Yechanan's presentation, that the machlekes applies by pagam mikara. In contrast to Ula, who deferred, he disagreed. He said that by pagam mikara, all agree it's mutar. So bottom line, we have two approaches. What is the halacha noisen tam lafkam? Rameir says asur, Shem says mutar. What exactly happened? What's the context? Ula says If it's pagam yikar, all agree it's okay. Machlekes is only hishbiach l'b'seif pagam. Rabbi Yochanan says just the opposite. Hishbiach is pagam. We can see clearly from the brayso, all agree it's asr. Machlekes is only by pagam yikar. Okay, before we depart to a different sugya, but what about the brayso here? Why do we have so many different cases? What's the point? Hanit losa bave. Bave is a gateway, sort of channel, right? Like bava kama, bava matzia. Different gates, different roads, different channels. Why do we have different sections to the brayso? We have the first section, first part. Both portions of sourdough came in simultaneously. Machlekes, what happens? Part B, they came in separately. First the truma came in, all agreed it's asr. First the chulin and then the truma, machlekes. Part C, the wine or the vinegar into the beans, machlekes. Why repeat so many different variations of the same halacha? Hanit losa bavi the tanim lameli. Why all these three things? Bishleim bava the seif. I understand why the last case was important. Kamashmon, because that taught us a very critical point in our discussion. But poigim mikara machlekes, and in fact, the machlekes applies to poigim mikara, which is the scenario depicted in that last case. Mitziyah sanami. Likewise, the middle section of the brayso was important to tell you hishbiach l'b'seif pagam divrei kol asr. So when the truma comes in first and was mashbiach, accomplished positive results, and then the chulin came in and ruined it, all agree it's asr, because once it was okay, once it was good at a certain point in time, it was mashbiach, it's asr, despite having gotten ruined afterwards. Ela reisha lamli, but what's the point of the first case, where both portions, isser and heter, fell in simultaneously into the dough? So that's subject to machlekes. What's the lesson that we derive from that halacha? Look, hashta umas seif. Look, even in the last case, where the wine landed in the beans and had absolutely no positive effect, hashta umas seif l'ika mashbach klal. There's no enhancement at all. Asr rabbanon, still the rabbanon say, well, even tamlav gam is asr. Reisha the kamashbach meboy in the reisha, where there was some sort of slight positive impact on the dough, and because it was a process, the two pieces of sourdough came in, overloaded the dough. Now the initial effect was a positive one. It fermented the dough, made it rise, but it accelerated the process to the point that it got over fermented. But there is an element of shvach. Initially it was mashbiach, and then it got ruined, right? So certainly in that case, the Rabbanon would say asr. So what's the point of even mentioning it? Reisha the kamashbach, and the reisha where there was an element of shvach initially mebaya, goes without saying that the Rabbanon say it's asr. What's the point? Amar Abaye, you're right. According to Rabbanon, there's no point. But according to Reb Shimon, who says it's okay, that's a big chiddush. Reisha the Reb Shimon itzrich. The reason for discussing that first case was to highlight Reb Shimon's opinion that allows it, despite the fact that there was a slight positive element resulting from the truma being there. And the initial effect was positive, even though later it got over fermented and got ruined. So Reishel Reb Shimon Itzrich, there's a point to highlight Reb Shimon. In fact, the Rabbanan would argue to Reb Shimon as follows. Isazu, look, this dough sitting on the table, how long does it typically take for it to ferment? What's the standard time frame? 2 hours. But because it had the double dose of sourdough, truma and chulin, it cut down the time by half. Typically it takes 2 hours for it to rise. What? Cut the time in half. Who caused it to ferment in a single hour? Yisur, the presence of the truma. The chulin on its own couldn't accomplish that. So in a way it has a positive effect, even though ultimately it got ruined. Reb Shimon says, look, you're choosing to focus on the truma. They were not working independent of each other. It was in conjunction with the chulin, right? They fell together, so you can't single out the truma and say, well, you help me. Reb Shimon responds by saying, all parts of this process was accomplished by team effort. The initial shvach came about by both, just like as the eventual ruination came about by both. So you can't separate the isser from the heter and say, well, let's attribute the positive effect to the isser. It was in collusion with the heter, so you can't make the dough usher. Asks the Gemara, why not? Reb Shimon, according to Reb Shimon, let's start of heter b'vezer b'adi adadi v'litzer. Why don't we just say that the chametz could have been accomplished, could have been achieved by the truma on its own, so let the heter, the chulin, be considered an accessory, merely as sort of assisting the isser, and make the dough usher. Let it be considered like the isser accomplished the results, brought about the chimutz, and sort of ignore the fact that there's chulin there, right? Rav Shimon responded by saying, "Well, there's chulin there, you can't ignore it. He didn't work on his own. He was doing it together in conjunction. Why? Why look at it that way? If I could have done it on my own, so you're merely an accessory. So let the heter, the permissible dough, be considered sourdough, be considered merely an accessory to the isser sourdough. Let's credit the truma sourdough as having achieved those results, and make the thing also a litzer." Says the Gemara, no, Reb Shimon Tamei, Reb Shimon is of the opinion that we find elsewhere Reb Shimon holds you can't even combine forbidden materials with each other. Certainly not something which is permissible to something which is forbidden. Each one is viewed separate from the other. You don't combine, you don't join, you don't consider one to be an accessory of the other. Each one has its own label, its own class, a mind of its own, an existence of its own. The snan, as we find in the Mishnah, the Sanya and the Brisa. Suppose you have a soup, okay, and you have forbidden material, arla, kalaya kerem, falling in there. So if there's enough to nullify it, Rashi says the shear over here, by the way, is 200. Typically it's 60. To nullify truma, you need 100. To nullify things which are forbidden, usher to eat and have a no, it doubles. 200 times as much quantity is required to nullify. So you have 1 ounce of arla, you need 200 ounces of permissible material to nullify it. But let's say really there isn't enough arla to cause a problem. You have a half ounce of arla into 200 ounces of heter. Batal, right? What if you have a half ounce of kalaya kerem as well? Shall we add the two together and consider it an ounce of isser having landed in the pot? And now, if we don't have 200 times as much, 200 ounces, which is 200 times as much as the total amount of both isurim, then you're in trouble. Or shall we say no? The arla had how much? A half ounce. That's not enough to forbid the pot. The kalayim, a half ounce. It's less than a 200th. Tanakama says you mitzdarif. The sanya, ha'arla, kalakera mitzdarif, and they join together, combine. The total is an ounce. The ounce which is comprised of arla and kalakera, you need 200 ounces to nullify it. Shimon mitzdarif, no, you can't join, you can't combine them. Each one is viewed independent of the other. Arla is a half ounce, it's batal. Kalai kerem, half ounce, batal. So if you can't combine isser and isser, certainly heter and isser, and therefore Reb Shimon says 2 portions of sourdough, 1 isser, 1 heter falls into the dough. We can't consider the heter as helping the isser, being accessory to the isser. No. The truma was attempting to bring about the results, but there was chulin as well, doing the same job all the while. So you can't attribute the results to the truma alone, and therefore it's not considered like the truma was mashbiach l'do. Continues the Gemara. Hu achbar. There was a story of this mouse. The nafal l'chavis the shichra landed in a barrel of beer. Okay, and it died in there, and they pulled it out. It was there for a while. Asrei Rav lahu shichra. Story came to Rav, who says you can't drink the beer because of the tam, the flavor that got transferred. The forbidden flavor got transferred from the creature into the liquid. Amru Rabban Kamed Rav Sheshes. So the Chachamim presented their analysis to Rav Sheshes. Why? Why in fact did Rav disallow the beer? We all know that a mouse doesn't necessarily have the best taste. So it's tam l'fgam. Ne'ema kasavar noisen tam l'fgam asur. Shall we say that Rav holds tam l'fgam is asur? Like Rameir? Amul Rav Sheshes responds Rav Sheshes, no. Ba'alma typically savar Rav natal is mutter. Typically he holds tam l'fgam is mutter. So why is this case different? Here there's a chiddush. The Torah gave us new standards when it comes to these types of creatures. How do I know? How do I know that these are exceptions? When it comes to creatures, even tam l'fgam is asr. Why? The homimas mos. The question is, why did the Torah have to sort of trouble itself, so to speak, to highlight the fact that shratzim are asr? Don't eat the creature. Who eats creatures? At least in those days. People had a natural aversion to mice and to creatures. Don't go near these things. Right? Mimas mos. Disgusting. Obdil in shemine. People keep away from these things naturally, right? So it's sort of like we find it unnecessary for the Torah to actually have to forbid them. Because of what they are. Taste great, they're right? The Torah goes out of its way to say, keep away, don't eat this stuff. Apparently it's the highlight. An additional layer of Isra. Hilkach Neisen Tam L'fgam Nami Asr, to teach us that even if it's just a flavor, and it's a flavor which I guess isn't as pungent as the original item. It's still asr. So again, you would keep away from the thing naturally, but the tam, which isn't as weighty as the creature itself, not so terrible, right? People wouldn't naturally keep away from that. Comes the Torah and says it's asr to cover this point as well. So even though it has a negative effect on the mix, not a very positive contribution, it's still asr. So in fact, this is an exception to the rule. Typically, tam l'fgam is mutter, but by shratzim, it's asr. We learn that from the very fact that Torah had to actually make them asr to begin with, which seemed to be unnecessary. Let me add, according to this way of thinking, we all know that a sheretz, at least those special shmoina shratzim, the list of 8, mouse and turtle, right? Certain types of creatures, when they are when they die, they're metame, right? So they impart tumah. And we know, we'll see in a Mishnah, that it's only going to be metame. It only can do that when it's still lach, it's still moist. It's like a fleshy look. But once it's completely dried up and dehydrated, almost like a powder, it no longer has the ability to be metame. Why? According to your way of thinking, if that's the case, litame lach v'yavish. Even when it's yavish, it could be metame. Alam matnam, but we learned in the Mishnah differently. Metame lachim, bein metame yiveshim. Creatures can only metame when they're lach, when they're moist, but not when they're dry. And the question is, why not? Look, people have a natural aversion from dead mice, and right? So why does it have to tell you that's metame? Who touched them anyways? presumably to tell you that it's matame in all states. Even when it's fully dehydrated, in which case it no longer creates that aversion, it's still going to be matame. So perhaps the Torah had to highlight it to add this layer of status to it. Says the Gemara, according to your approach, let me ask you a question. Avodah Zarah, right? Which is matame. So tame lach v'yavish. Should also be matame whether it's moist or dry. B'alam Tanan, we have a Mishnah which says no. Matame lachan ve'matame nivation. Avodah Zarah is only matame when it's still moist. Matame lachan, but once it's dry, ve'matame. Question is why? There's a natural aversion to touching this. The fact that it has to go out of its way and say it's tummy, presumably to add another layer of tummy even when it's yavish. Oh, so the answer must be that's exeris hakasaf. Don't ask any question. Avodah Zarah marachmana. Torah labels it as Avodah Zarah. Only that's matame. And what does that mean? When it has the ability to impregnate. V'ru'il hazriya. Chanami here as well by the shratzim. Torah says it's matame b'maisam. What does b'maisam mean? Amar Rachmana. Torah says b'maisam kein maisam. If it still has the form that it had when it died, it's still moist. It has a fleshy appearance. So it's exeris hakos. Okay, bottom line is Rav said the beer is asur because of the mouse. Was it because he holds nice and tam of gam is asur, or perhaps a mouse is an exception? Maska flowed of simrar do. Umi mois. You're assuming that a mouse is most disgusting. Why? Who says? They serve it at royal dinners. It's served at the most royal of dinners. Amar simrar do kasha. No, difference is like this. Haba the dabra, haba the masa. But the dabra is the field mice, the one out, on the fields. Those are served. Haba the masa. We're speaking about a domestic mouse, which is mos. Amar Rava. What's the conclusion? Hilchasa. The bottom line is noisen tam of gamas mutter. Tam of gamas mutter, regardless of whether it's this, that, or sheretz. So we don't hold of that, newfound status that a sheretz was given. No, we don't hold of that. Tesis points this out, that even by shratzim, if it's paigim, it's mutter. So the truth is, va'achbar b'shichra, in terms of that mix of the mouse that was found in the beer, I'm not sure why Rav said it's asur. Is it because imishim lechasav v'nais gam is asur? He holds that if it's tam of gam, it would be asur all over. He holds tam of gam is asur. V'les hilchot was saying we don't hold to that. We hold nice tam of gam is mutter. On the other hand, imishim lechasavar nice tam of gam mutter, or perhaps typically his position is tam of gam is mutter. Va'achbra b'shichra, but a mouse and beer is different. Ashpuchi mashbach. Actually, it enhances. It improves the flavor. For some reason. Because the beer is so pungent and so strong, it doesn't get adversely affected by the any negative elements found in the mouse. And actually only serves to improve it, only extracts positive elements from the mouse. So I'm not sure. Iboilu, now comes a new shayla. What if the mouse would have dropped into vinegar? So what's the question? Mai. This is Rashi on top. He says, Miyamrin, shall we say vinegar, due to its high level of acidity, perhaps the vinegar, similar to the rationale that we just had by the beer, vinegar all the more so, because of its high level of acidity, actually resists any staleness of that sheretz. It's not going to adversely affect the vinegar. If anything, the beer will extract, positive flavor, positive taste from the achbar, and it should be asr. Amali Rav Hillel Rav Ashi. Says Rav Hillel to Rav Ashi, I have a story to resolve this question. Hava'uvd, there was a story, by Rav Kahana. So yeah, the mouse dropped into the vinegar and died inside. V'asar. He says it's no good. V'asar Rav Kahana forbade the vinegar. Amalei. So he says no, you can't prove anything from here. Hahu. That was very different. Imratut. The mouse stayed in there long enough that he sort of dissolved in there. He disintegrated. So now it was more than an issue of just flavor and taste. There was actual mouse material inside the vinegar. The concern was that if you drink the vinegar, you might end up swallowing a little piece of a mouse, which is asr. So in that case, certainly it's asr, because you have actual, tangible mouse material in there. We're speaking that the mouse was taken out, was removed. It's just a question of whether he imparted a positive flavor or negative flavor. We're not sure about that. Ravina Savar l'shura v'meya v'chad. Ravina sought to establish a formula that by which a mouse would be bottle if it had fallen into the vinegar with an amount of 100. So as long as there's 100 times more than the Isser, it's bottle. Why go so far? Why require 100? So he figured that because it's so acidic, it has like a pickling effect. The vinegar draws out very potent, a flavor from that Isser, in which case you need more to nullify it. Typically, 60 times as much is enough. Here you need 100 times. Okay, so if you have 100 times as much as the mouse, then it gets, dissolved, dissipates, diffused, and nullified. Now, why do you pick 100? 101, which means that 1 is the Isser, and you have 100 times more heter than Isser. Amar, because he figured, Lagaram Truma, it's not worse than Truma. It's not, even by Truma we say, Truma oile bechad, as long as it's 101, it's okay. So he decided to stop there. 100 versus 1 is enough. Amali Rav Tachlifa bar Gizla Ravina. Who says stop by 100? Dilma katavlan shal Truma kadeira? Dummy. Perhaps it should be compared, the flavor of this mouse and the vinegar can be compared like tavlan, tavlan shal Truma. Truma seasoning, kadeira in the pot. Dummy, it's comparable to that. Like batal tamai, which is not batal very easily. You need much more than 100. Because it's so strong, it's pungent, it's profound, it just permeates the entire dish, right? So you can't suffice with 100. Perhaps you need way more. Rav Achoy shir b'chala b'chamshin. In fact, Rav Achoy actually went down. He says you don't even need forget about 100. You don't even need your standard 60. Even 50 is enough. Rashi says because just the opposite. He felt that since the vinegar is so powerful and sharp and acidic, the mouse is not going to have an effect on it. Very little effect. It's going to be it's going to be a very minor contribution. So 50 times is okay. He decided that a mouse and beer, you apply the 60 rule, like any other Isser. No less, no more, standard 60. That's the conclusion. Whether it's beer, vinegar, that was visited by this mouse, and then the mouse was removed, and all you have is the effect, the flavor effect. 60 times as much is enough. Kol Isurin Shabbat, like any other Isser in the Torah, when it's min b'she'ein mina, one type falls into the other, it's a question of Nisinas Tam. As long as there's 60 times of heter volume, 60 times as much as the Isser, it is batal and completely mutter. Okay, so in a nutshell, we discussed Nois and Tam Lafgam, Machlekes, Rameir says Asr, Shem says mutter, Rameir learns from the pots that have to be kosher despite them having a tam pogam. Rav Shimon learns from the pasuk of nevela, has to be suitable, perfectly edible. Otherwise, it's if it's pogam, it's mutter. According to Ula, the machlekes pertain to hishbiach or b'seif pogam, but if it's pogam mikor, all agree it's mutter. Rabbi Yechon went the other way around. The hishbiach say pogam, all agree it's asur. Machlekes is specifically by pogam miikara, and we brought a raya to that. And we shifted to the mouse and the beer and the wine. Rab said the beer was asur. The Gemara gave some rationale for that. The Torah is giving higher standards when it comes to shratzim. The conclusion was that in fact it's doesn't talmud-bavli is really mutter. Regarding the mouse and the beer, went back and forth. Asur 100 or 60, 50, depending if it's beer or vinegar. But v'hilchas, the bottom line was we don't differentiate. A mouse is like any other isser, beer or vinegar like any other heter, as long as you have 60 times as much of the over the isser, so it's an ounce of isser falling into 60 ounces of heter. That's mabatal the isser and it's mutter. All the best to you, and hatzlacha.